that permission is given in the Sharia and Islamic law. But Muhammad Abduhu argued, and he said that Islam gave this permission to protect women, to safeguard them in a society where women were abundant because of war. There were orphans, there were widows, and instead of leaving them alone and unattended, where they will have no source to sustain themselves, Islam wanted that these women should be given a protection and respect in the institution of family. And he says, but here in Egypt, we have made the law of God a mockery. And it has virtually become a form of abuse where older people are marrying young girls, and there are enormous fights within the family. There is abuse. There is a quarrel within the children. Who is the child of favored wife or less favored wife? So he said that now what we are actually doing is that we are defeating the spirit. So he wanted in fact to ban it. Because here we see that Sharia has its limitations. And what is important for a Muslim and believer is not only to focus on the law and Sharia, but also focus on the higher ethics and morals which Islam wants to serve. And we need to strive that what are the moral and ethical principles which lay behind the law and which is the spirit of law. And we should respect that spirit and should not think only in terms of is it something we can get away with that or not. So here Sharia is considered a basic structure, but there are higher forms of ethics and morals and spirituality. So if the concept of Sharia, the concept of Islam as an activity created enormous scholars of law and a very deep tradition where Muslims continuously thought about issues which Muslims were facing. And the great ulama like Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik and Imam Shafi, they systematized Islamic law, structured it, developed it, gave it a form, and made it easy for us. Okay, now today there are people who criticize and they think that we don't need these fiqhs, and that is very stupid, because fiqhs are not outside Islam. Fiqhs are actually an expression of Islam. They are systematization of Islam. And in fact, fiqhs came before hadith came, before sunnah came. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah's fiqh was codified before Imam Bukhari compiled his Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay. And Imam Abu Hanifa himself was a great muhaddis, and he was a tabi'i, and he heard hadith from, according to one narration, 4 Sahaba and one narration from 16 Sahaba. And he was himself a great muhaddis. So this tradition is very, very important. We cannot ignore it. It's not possible that we go and take Quran and Hadith and then just with the help of dictionary we should say, okay, this is this and this is that. It's not that easy. There is enormous thinking which is involved, the way law is developed from within sources, from within the text which we have. Okay? Because text is the basis of law. That is not law itself. Quran is not a book of law. If you read Quran Kareem, you will see out of 200 pages, the law is hardly 7 pages. If you separate the verses which deal with law, there are hardly 6-7 pages will be law. Rest of the Quran is not legalities. Rest of the Quran is other things. It deals with Iman, with Aqidah, with morals, with ethics, with history of earlier prophets and Anbiya and their stories and what is the lesson and the whole phenomena of universe, the nature as the sign of God. So it has enormous diversity of themes which are present in the text of Quran Kareem. It's not only law which is there. Then the idea of Iman, that how you understand the Muslim vision of life, how do you understand the concept of God, the prophethood, the hereafter, that developed in Islam, many sciences of philosophy and theology and kalam. So there is enormous work in Islamic tradition about every aspect of faith. We believe in one God. What is God? What's His nature? How does He create? What is the relationship between God and created world? All these theological issues, philosophical issues, Muslims dealt with them in depth. It created whole philosophy of Islam. Then the idea of ihsan, that you worship God as He ought to be worshipped. It created Islamic spirituality, what we call InamulHaq. Sometimes we call it tasawwuf. Now the tasawwuf sometimes look at it negatively because of enormous corruption which took place in the name of Sufism in the Muslim world. But if we take the original term which Quran used and which Prophet used, that is in fact ihsan, the sciences of ihsan. And the sciences of ihsan dealt with the issues of inner purity. That how human soul can be purified. Because only a purified soul will return to God. What a person can do to get rid of negative elements of soul, the darkness of soul, the desire of sin, the desire of disobedience to God, jealousies, corruptions, lust, greed, love of this world. So all these negative elements of this soul, how they can be removed, how the positive elements, the love of God, the love of Prophet, the remembrance of hereafter, virtuous activities, sabr, shukr, rida, love, khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how these values can be developed. That was in fact the essential element of ihsan. And ihsan created in our history what we call awliya. Those great ulama who were not only knowledgeable in worldly things, in terms of sharia and rules and laws, but they had also a very high degree of inner purity, a very high degree of inner enlightenment. And that is the reason that in the spread of Islam, the greatest role was played by awliya. Wherever awliya went, Islam spread. It spread because of their enormous spirituality. Sometimes people criticize, but that is a very, very wrong approach. I mean, you cannot take some things, corruption, and make it the basis, because someone can say the whole Islam is corrupt, so does it mean we should reject Islam? No. If there is some corruption in Islam, we separate that corruption from Islam itself. Similarly, if there is corruption in Sufism or Tasawwuf, we separate that corruption from the original Quranic idea of ihsan, which is essential and which is an integral element